The transition from student to professional is one of the hardest things that we do in technical education. Yet, unlike almost everything else that we do in the computing community, we have nothing to guide us beyond our good intentions. We have no standards. We have no literature. We have no best practices to help with this movement. About the best that we can do is that we take these young people, remold them in our own image, send them off into the cruel, cruel world, and give them our blessings. Yet that blessing and those good intentions are important, but they do not, by themselves, a technical professional make. For the coming year, the Errant hashtag is going to take a look at the challenges and the problems of young professionals. We're going to talk with new professors, with new security professionals, with young software developers. In the process, we're going to try to understand the situations in which they work, the forces that they face, and also the problems that they need to address. Along the way, we hope to be able to offer some best practices, or at least some insights that don't smack too much of ill-conceived advice. At first glance, it would appear that the move from graduate student to professor is the simplest transition in professional life. After all, the individual has merely moved from one side of the teacher's desk to the other. They work in the same kind of environment, they have the same kind of colleagues, and, as often as not, they have the same kind of responsibilities that they had before the transition. However, that observation masks many of the forces that shape professional life. As often as not, the new professors have started to acquire the trappings of adulthood. They are living in a new city, they have a new house. As often as not, they have a new baby or perhaps one on the way. These are also part of the equations that build the responsibilities and the character of a young professional. Over the past year, I have been following the transition of a new professor named Michael. Michael graduated from a university on the East Coast and made the trip across the United States to a new job on the West Coast. As a graduate student, Michael was a little bit of a rebel and more than a little bit of an optimist. He viewed the world as being filled with problems that he could solve. Rather than follow his advisor's advice or take a problem that was offered to him, Michael decided to branch out into a new field. And it's a field that many, even today, don't believe is properly part of computing. As part of his work, he organized a seminar that tried to identify the intellectual tools that would be needed to solve computing problems in this field. It was a fascinating activity. It included not only graduate students, but there were some professors at his university, a few people from local industry, and there were one or two people like myself who followed at a distance over Skype. As we listened, the discussions were fascinating because you got the feeling of someone pushing computer science outward, of trying to expand it into new ways and new fields, and to bring to it their insights and their understanding. Well, I last talked to Michael last May when he had just started his new job. He had taken a 6-month interim period at an internet firm. He had not quite grasped what the job was, nor really moved very far from being a graduate student. But step by step, slowly the job started to discipline him. It happened very quickly when 2 senior faculty left his university, and he found himself in charge of a program. All of a sudden, he was working all the machinery of a university. He was teaching his classes, advising students, developing curriculum, all of those things. And in addition, the research activities, which as a graduate student came so easily, were now part of the great machinery that goes with it. He had grant proposals to prepare. He had to serve on NSF panels. He had to prepare ideas for panels for conferences. All of this started to bring home the idea that he needed to fit himself into the structure and support it, at least for the moment, before he could again push outward and be the leader that he had been as a graduate student. About 3 months after Michael and I last talked, the baby finally arrived. And he moved into that role that is so common to anyone who's observed it or been part of it. Everything was new. The simplest task held uncommon import. And he learned very quickly how a baby disciplines you into family life, how you step into the role that it needs. Caring for a baby is, of course, perhaps the simplest role of caring for children. You don't have to tell them what the issues are, what the things they face, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. You just keep them going and feed and clean them. He had taken the first step, Michael, towards becoming the parent that he needed to be. And in some ways, I think he had reached the same state in his professional life. He had become a new professor. The institution had disciplined him into that role, and he was starting to learn how it worked, how you made decisions, how you helped the field advance. He's not the leader, the professional leader, that he's going to be in 3 or 5 or 10 years. But he's taken the first step into that role, the step that disciplines you. And then the next stage is when you move forward and discipline the field and the institution around you. This is David Allen Greer for Errant #. Take care.